Starfleet's USS Enterprise E represented a new era for the Federation Starfleet. Starships were now sleek and designed to be slim. Rather than the bulky Galaxy class, it was a stable point of modern fleet design. However, this Enterprise, or rather the Sovereign class, was specifically designed to fight the Borg. Yes, Star Trek's super scary and easily best villain in the franchise. Did it do this? Yes, but only once it seems. So, let's explore the USS Enterprise E.
That was not my fault.
Hello, I'm Captain Jack and welcome to the Hangar Bay. On this channel, we take a deep dive into the best starships, technology, and more from your favourite sci-fi universes. Today, we're talking about the Sovereign-class. It's a Federation starship first introduced in Star Trek's 8th feature film, First Contact. The Sovereign-class represented a brand new design for Star Trek's iconic and legendary USS Enterprise. Today, we dive into the world of Trek to explore why this is perhaps the best Enterprise design. Remember, for the latest videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let us know what you think of this ship in the comments below. And also, what would you name your Star Trek ship? Comment your answers down below. Let's get all of the basics of the ship out of the way first. The ship first entered service to replace the Enterprise D as Starfleet's newest flagship. Built at the San Francisco Fleet Yards on Earth and launched in her original configuration in 2372. The most advanced ship in the fleet housed an extraordinary amount of equipment in the colossal 685-meter long frame, within 24 decks. Built with a Borg threat in mind, she packed 12 Type 12 phaser arrays. The phasers had been designed so they could automatically remodulate, making them more effective against the Borg's adaptive shielding. The Enterprise E was fitted with 5 torpedo tubes, which could fire a spread of 12 torpedoes each. In addition to the red-orange flashy kabumi lights, the ship also carried their latest evolved form, the blue kabumi lights. Just kidding, these use 0-point energy to create a high energy yield, or better known as quantum torpedoes. Enterprise carried in 2 hangar bays a newer design of shuttlecraft, as well as a captain's yacht, which in the case of Picard fond naming of notable historical figures was named the Constieu, after the French naval officer Jacques Constieu, and later on the Argo, which gave us a very interesting scene in Star Trek Nemesis. The ship had 2 independent but linked computer cores, one in the saucer running deck 6 to 9, and in the second in the engineering hull between deck 17 and 19. The source was counted from decks 1 to 14, with everyone's favourite lounge running to 10 forward. Of course, being nearly 700 meters in length meant the Sovereign-class had quite some space for interior design. But how many decks did the ship actually have? Well, this is up for debate. It was originally designed for 23 decks. However, in Star Trek First Contact, Captain Jean-Luc Picard mentions the Enterprise E having 24 decks. Yet in the same film, another character mentions deck 26, suggesting 2 more. Even more troublesome, in Star Trek Nemesis, the ship has 29 decks, mentioned twice, once by Data and then by Worf. This could easily be due to the interpretation of lower deck space. Maybe. Engineering and its related systems, such as EPS power taps, the central matter-antimatter reaction chamber, and support labs were spread out over decks 14 through 18. Main engineering was split between 3 levels and accessed from deck 16. The main warp core assembly ran vertically from decks 10 to 24, where a hatch allowed it to be ejected in case of emergency, or if some idiots decided to use subspace weapons. By 2375, the ship had undergone at least 1 major refit, and further on to 2379, a major refit adding an additional 4 phase arrays and multiple torpedo launchers, bringing the total to... we don't actually know. The new nacelle pylons were longer, broader, and more sharply swept. However, the nacelles were moved and shortened, reducing the overall length from 685 to 673 meters. Deck count was also increased to 29, it seems. See our previous point on that. The Sovereign's maximum speed, and by extension the Enterprise Z, tops out at warp 9.95. It's a little bit slower than our beloved Intrepid class, represented by the USS Voyager, but still pretty nippy. The third ship to be commanded so far, canonically by Captain Jean-Luc Picard and his second Enterprise, which was already under construction when the Enterprise D ploughed through that forest. Jean-Luc brought most of his senior staff from her predecessor, and provided pivotal in stopping Borg and Romulan attacks on Earth. The Enterprise E also took part in the Dominion War, it seems. Sadly, the Sovereign-class did not actually take part in any major engagements of the Dominion War, instead putting out diplomatic bushfires and dealing with a Federation diplomacy, it seems. After having been out in space for nearly a year, chasing aforementioned comets and random patrols, they were assigned to the Romulan neutral zone, instead of in defense of Sector 001, Earth, against the incoming Borg cube. If Picard hadn't decided to commit a direct violation of her orders for the Battle of Sector 001, it could have ended very, very differently. Possibly Wolf 359 differently, and a rescue mission to the Vulcan, where both fleets were quickly massacred by Borg and the minesship Nevada. It could have gone like that. towards an Enterprise that's late to the party. Following directly from the Battle of Sector 001 and the entirety of that, the Vantage ship and the crew were all caught in a temporal wake of a sphere that escaped during the short work of Enterprise and how it made the Borg cube, along with other Borg busters. The ship was sent back in time to 2063 to prevent the Borg from preventing Earth's first warp flight, and by extension, first contact with the Vulcans. In 2375, Captain Picard expressed his dissatisfaction in being relegated to diplomatic missions, when they were ordered to deal with a territorial dispute in the Goran system, and playing host to new protectorates, the Evora, when the rest of the Federation were embroiled in a bloody war with Dominion. That said, the Enterprise deals with a situation within the unusual region known as the Briar Patch, when Lieutenant Commander Data seemingly goes rogue on a planet the Starfleet were investigating. They encounter a sonar, a race that is discovered to be the same as a Baku, another race but skin deep or radioactively different. But due to the rings of the planet, they lived on, causing them to cease aging, an effect noticed by the number of ship's crew. The Enterprise ends up with a dodgy dealing Admiral Dougherty, who realized that Data had discovered his plans to relocate the Baku onto a holodeck ship, to utilize the plan for his own personal gain with the Baku, which would result of the skin stretching experiment, became a sonar. Whoopsies. Due to the disruptions of the Briar Patch, Enterprise had to reach the outer edge to send a communication to Starfleet about the situation. With 2 sonar ships up the aft bay, Riker utilizes the native Metreon gas, which is highly volatile. They collect as much as the storage cells could hold with a ram scoop and joystick their way to victory, when the pursuing thinks it's oh so clever to fire isolitic weapons. Long story short, they discovered a sonar actually for Baku. They didn't get carted off to a holoship, and everyone lived happily ever after. By the way, we heavily suggest you watch Star Trek Insurrection for the full plot of this movie. After it was found that either the sonar or some rogue sonar, after events of Insurrection, would become the allies of the Dominion, so the Enterprise kinda did help during the Dominion War. The final outing of a major battle of the Enterprise E and the senior crew of 15 years culminates in 2379, following a battle of a Basin Rift. Shinzon, a younger and deteriorating clone of Jean-Luc, appears as Praetor of Remus in the Scimitar, a massive Riemann dreadnought. He's hellbent on capturing Picard to learn the location of fleets with the end goal of wiping out Earth and waging war on the Federation. Despite having the aid of 2 Romulan ships, Enterprise and the support are similarly no match for the Scimitar. Both Romulan ships were lured into a ruse by the Scimitar, which exposed a partially decloaked section of the hull and unleashed a disabling volley of weapon fire. Commander Troy has the idea to employ the same invasive link with the Viceroy to determine their location even under cloak. Captain Picard boards the Scimitar alone and is able to make his way to the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Data leaps from the Enterprise Scimitar to save the day. Meanwhile, Commander Riker is able to stomp a Riemann Viceroy intruder to his death in a large void of the ship. You've got to wonder where this void is. We like to think it's a turbo lift shaft? Maybe. Captain Picard skewers Shinzon in one last fight. Data blows up the damn ship with himself, and Enterprise, the Federation, the Romulans, Earth is saved, and all live happily ever after.
Goodbye.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
In 2381, Jean-Luc Picard would leave the USS Enterprise E. He would be put in charge of a Starfleet mission of a Romulan relocation, working alongside the top Starfleet Romulan intelligence analyst Raffaella Musica, to aid the Romulan Star Empire in relocation of its people to survive the impending supernova to their home star. It is revealed in Star Trek Picard that upon Jean-Luc's promotion to the rank of Admiral, Worf was promoted to the rank of Captain and took command of the USS Enterprise E. In 2384, the USS Enterprise E was part of a Starfleet fleet mobilized to deal with the USS Protostar in the Gamma Serpentis system. However, after being affected by a weapon known as the Living Construct, the Starfleet ships would begin firing on each other. How damaged the Enterprise would be in the Battle of Gamma Serpentis is not known. Worf's captaincy of the Enterprise E might have been brief. He stepped down from the Enterprise E after an incident in Krila Prime. The final mission of the USS Enterprise E was classified. Whether this mission was for Krila Prime 1 or something else, we don't know. With the arrival of the Odyssey-class USS Enterprise F in 2386, we can either assume that after only 13 years of service, the Enterprise E was either destroyed or decommissioned after sustaining major damage from its service. It seems that George LaForge partially blamed Worf for the fact they could not make use of the Enterprise E during a Borg crisis of 2401. The second Next Generation movie called for a tougher Starship Enterprise that was fit to fight the Borg. Production designer Herman Zimmerman handed Johnny the biggest challenge of his career to date: design the next Enterprise of Star Trek. It's every Trek fan's dream. The film hadn't actually been greenlit when he was tasked with it, so there was no script and very little in the way of a brief. He was aware that it was only a few angles the Enterprise D could be filmed from, so with that in mind, he wanted to make the Enterprise E look as good as possible from many angles as possible, and not deviate too far from Matt Jeffries' original design concept, and he did. He gave us the best Enterprise in our opinion. Eve's initial approach was to stretch the Enterprise D. However, when a snippet of a script became available, the ship was to be significantly more advanced, faster, and more importantly, designed to fight the Borg. The shapes of the D looked as if they couldn't handle the type of speed needed, so it definitely needed to be sleeker and definitely needed to be faster. Drawing inspiration from his own work of modifying the Excelsior-class to create the Enterprise B, he stretched the engineering hull to give it an extended shape. The first saucer shape was rounded, but he felt this was going far too back in Starship design, so went with the established oval, but rotated 90 degrees to give the impression of speed and power. Although Zimmerman wanted sketches as soon as possible, Eves refused to submit anything until he was comfortable with the direction the E evolution and the design was taking. Once designs had been submitted and met with praise, he worked them in nacelles, as Eves loved the older look with the long nacelles, and with the new technology behind it, a longer, sleeker nacelle would better balance the craft. First, sketches had the pylons swept forward for most of the aft hull, to give it a sense of lunging, but then also drew what they would look like sweeping backward from the mid of the hull. Another detail toyed with having them peaking below the saucer whilst at sublight, then raised to draw up level with the saucer, in keeping with the variable warp geometry technology of the Intrepid-class starship. Removing nacelles and forward-swept turkey leg struts made it to be almost finished design, but set designer Zimmerman pointed out that it made the ship look like a turkey sat in a pan, and no one would want to look at the ship the same way after. Therefore, these elements will pass up in favour of fixed and backward swept nacelles. Toughening up the new Special Enterprise meant to take away as many vulnerabilities as possible, such as the neck, blending the saucer directly into the engineering hull, the deflector scoop tapering right up into the ventral torpedo launcher, beefing up the nacelle struts, all of which were eventually shown to be a significant weakness in Star Trek Beyond, when the neck, nacelle pylons, and deflector were all rapidly wasted. Not that a single shot from a phase rival couldn't rip them a new one anyway.
Assimilate this.
The Enterprise E had the distinction of being a final ship to be built as a practical model. ILM was on the cusp of transitioning to completely CG models, but weren't ready to completely give up on studio models just yet. So the design team built a 10.5 foot model of the Enterprise E. Areas of the drawings for ILM to work from were deliberately left vague, giving them a creative freedom of finer points on the hull, the shape of the escape pods, as well as the main deflector. The model was very detailed in that ILM put slide film photos behind the windows of the Enterprise E, to give the impression of a giant skyscraper. The model was scanned to create a CG model for far lower res shots, such as entering the time vortex. Insertion in VFX was handed to the Santa Barbara studios, which only worked in CG, so it made a new scan of the model and altered the design slightly to accommodate the captain's yacht and the aft torpedo launcher, which had been absent in the previous film. Star Trek Nemesis was taken on by a third VFX house, Digital Domain. Eves took this opportunity to finesse the design, changes he wanted to make since the model was first finished, notably the nacelles moved up slightly and the lines of the saucer flowing into the secondary hull. Another practical model of a saucer was built for the collision with the scimitar. More changes were in mind for the fifth installment, but he never had the opportunity to have them implemented when the ship was being repaired in space dock. Many sets for First Contact Insurrection, save for the bridge, engineering, and corridors, were redressed from Star Trek Voyager, most obviously sickbay. By the time Star Trek Nemesis came around, Voyager had ended and the sets were gone, though some props, such as the chairs, survived and were used on the bridge of Valdor, which itself was a redress of the Enterprise E bridge. A new sickbay and other borrowed sets needed to be built for the film, however briefly used and forgettable they were. To summarise, it's apparent the new ship built to fight the Borg only fought the Borg once, much as Starfleet's efforts to not let them. Picard and the crew enjoy ramming things with their starships. That's the end of this video. Hopefully you enjoyed making your way through it. I've been Captain Jack in the Hangar Bay. Remember, if you were talking about science fiction, we want to hear about it.